Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. A lot of what I talk about is clues. Looking into the future doesn't mean you're a soothsayer or a magician or anything. It's simply about clues. I look out there right now, and I'm thinking, is it time to bring my garbage in? Can't really tell. Not in that context. But if I look over here, you can see quite clearly that my neighbors still have their garbage uncollected. That means, by extension, my garbage, given that they're not that far apart, is not going to be collected. And therefore, it would not be fruitful of me to waste my time going upstairs and going downstairs and picking up my garbage. That's really all that being a predictor of the future is. You look at trends, you look at ideas, you look at what's going on, and from that, you can tell roughly a little bit into the future what's going to happen. This is why I love the Baltic Dry Index. It's a wonderful tool. For those of you who don't know what it is, definitely look it up. I highly recommend it. The Baltic Dry is basically what companies are paying for containers so they can move their product to its eventual destination. And given that it's dry goods generally means stuff that's going to be made into other things. For example, steel, rubber, oil, not so much, although there are oil tankers that do go on ships. Full proper tanker ships generally carry the oil, but there's all sorts of oils besides petroleum. Major chocolate companies move the oils they need to produce the chocolates that they have. Cadbury, Ferrero Rocher, all those sorts of places. They have really cool tankers that I don't know how to describe them other than they're really cool. But the Baltic Dry, like I said, is really one of the most important indexes to pay attention to. And lately, it's shot up to the best it's been in a decade easily. Like containers were down around 1,000 for years and years and years, and now they've shot up to 3,000. Given that my field of expertise is logistics, I was looking at that thinking, maybe this is the time to open up a company. Maybe this is the time to start looking into doing some more consulting work. And I thought about it, and the more I thought about it, I started to think, what major event did we have that was going to shoot the prices up of containers? The pandemic. See, during the pandemic, people were making essential things. So while the amount of containers needed was still there, it wasn't quite as high as it would have been if everybody had been running. In simple language, things like food and water were being shipped, but, rubber and plastic for toys was not. Now, since Christmas is coming up, generally the Baltic Dry gives you a picture of 3 to 6 months down the year because whatever's being bought still needs to be manufactured, still needs to be put in a package, still needs to be marketed, etc., etc. So with the Baltic Index going dry, I was looking at that saying, does this mean we're going to have a really great Christmas? And no, unfortunately, the answer is not we're going to have a retail boom. As much as I hope it happens, that's not going to be the case. The real story is the shipping companies did the most logical thing that they could do. What happens when you're not being profitable? You start to pull back on expenses. You start to ground things that you don't need. You get rid of the old stuff because you don't need it. It's old. It needs extra maintenance. And that's what the container lines did. Your Maersk, your Hapag-Lloyd, your Costco, all those big container lines, they simply said, fine, the old small container ships, we're not going to run those. We're only going to run the big ones. So quietly, container availability has gone down. This creates an artificial scarcity. Well, no, I imagine you can still get the container. You just can't book the thing on a ship. And if you can't book it on a ship, you're pretty much limited to where you're sending it. Whenever you have a smaller pool and a greater demand, the price is naturally going to go up. And this is what I really feel the bounce in container prices, as indicated by the Baltic Dry Index, well, that's what it is. Normally, it'd be a reason to get excited that people are getting back to work and container expenses are going up, blah, blah, blah. But really, it just means those containers, you can buy them, they're just not going anywhere. This is similar to what happened way back in 2002 when a major company decided they wanted to run fewer trains between Toronto and the Maritimes. And they did this in a clever way. They started hiring trucking companies to carry the containers instead. So while they were taking, let's say, $6,000 to move your container, they were selling it off at $4,000, which was good money for trucking companies back then to move it one way. And for that reason, they were able to keep their prices high, their service high, and still reduce their capacity. While they were doing that, they retired the old trains that were going up and down that old route, and they've never replenished that service. So I'm wondering if this is part of the new normal. Is there going to be reduced service worldwide? Is there going to be an artificial scarcity of goods? I mean, nationalists of all description have talked about restricting trade for the longest time. And, they want, in their hearts, they want to encourage the homegrown trade. They want to encourage the local businesses. But let's be honest, there's certain restrictions what local businesses can and cannot do. For example, a local business is never going, well, not never, but it's never going to be able to compete with a Kraft, with a Nabisco, with a Nestle, with one of them. At best, you're going to be able to hope maybe you can get your brand of canned soup in the local supermarket. Generally, though, people tend to focus on smaller things. In 2021, there's a lot of maturing technologies that it's going to be interesting to see how they develop over the next year or two. You have your 3D printing, which means where once we would go to the dollar store and buy those little soldiers, the plastic ones that have been around forever, the army men as they might be called. Now, there'd be no point to that. People can buy a printer for under $200 and print their own at home. Lego pieces. Lego is going to be a very interesting development over the next little bit because Lego's been the industry standard for decades. Decades. And to be honest, they no longer have their position of prominence. Somebody else will be able to either create a cheap knockoff or, depending on the trademarks, they'll be able to create their own version of Lego that's just as good. And if enough people pick up on it, the big company is going to go out of business because people are going to be printing their stuff at home. Food services. Looking at Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, and, I forget the other ones, DoorDash, that's it. So why would a pizza delivery company hire their own driver when they can do virtually nothing and get the same service? Things are being nationalized, denationalized. Everything's going on a different scale than we thought it would before. And this is going to be the interesting future of the economy. You don't need to be an expert to look ahead and say things are getting pretty weird. All you need to do is something as very simple as look at that garbage can over there. It's nearly full, so I know mine hasn't been emptied. So the Baltic Dry shows prices are going up. I'm going to tell you right now, this means consumer goods are going up, but that's not telling anybody anything. That's kind of like saying, while the ship is sinking, by the way, water is wet. It doesn't predict anything, but at the same token, it is emblematic of the world as a whole. Next couple months, how they're going to go, it's anybody's guess. But until then, we thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and we hope you have a fantastic day.